This is terrible. I have just had braces reapplied to my face. So I'm going to apologize in advance for any sort of weird noises and that sort of matter that might be coming out of my mouth. So just a quick heads up there. Now the second thing I am slightly annoyed about is I've done a little bit of work in between episodes. So we got this little bit section here done, and I've kind of revisited and taken a look at it. And I basically don't like any of the parts that I did. So here's a big massive tip to all of you guys who are trying to build a little bit of rock work, whether that be with Lego or in Minecraft. I recommend taking something that is sort of a base structure or kind of a framework. So in this case, that would be this little section here. So basically you make a framework of what you want the rock or whatever terrain you're building really to look like, and then you can kind of follow these sorts of guidelines that you set for yourself and kind of shape the rock to, in this case it's rock, but in other cases it could just be like some landscaping or whatever. And with these sort of guidelines you can then trace out the rock a lot easier and kind of fill in the gaps. Now I kind of learned this technique from watching both Scar and B-Dubs build up their sorts of landscaping that they do. And I guess I went directly against my own advice because I started building up this section here, which, you know, was going fairly well. This looks decently good. But then I kind of thought, this doesn't really line up with the shaping of the boulder in the picture. So then I just sort of stopped and built up kind of how I wanted it to actually look like. And now when I put this piece on top there, so that's what I want the actual rock to look like, is that band right there, you can see that it doesn't really line up with the section down below. So I'm going to have to redo basically this entire section here, which is not a lot, so it's not too terrible, but still annoying that I have to redo stuff just because I forgot to do my own advice. So that was a bit of a tangent that no one really wanted to hear at the start of the video. Anyways, welcome back to episode 14 of building up Mumbo's season 8 base out of Lego. And I think the main focus of today is going to be trying to complete the front side here, so we'll try and get all of this rounding done. Now, before I keep working and potentially do a quick time lapse here, I'd just like to show you guys kind of a top-down view of this little section here. So once when we get a couple more of the wedges in place, you guys can see that we kind of have this nice rounded area on the side here. So this is where one of those houses is gonna go. Now, if I have a picture of the Minecraft version, you can see this is where that red house is. That house will go there, and then we can start linking up pathways and stuff. But that obviously is not before we complete the rest of this section here. So I'm gonna try and get that done fairly quickly. This bulge at the top is now for the most part done. So I did manage to curve off the end here, and I got it to be fairly nice looking. So we kind of got a nice rounded look all the way around that kind of boulder outcropping there. So it's looking fairly decent, and we do have a bunch of space up above here to build up the house. Now, before we move on to this section over here, there is one thing that I have to confess. I did have to use a piece of tape on this little green plant right there because I just couldn't figure out any way to fill that little bit of a gap that was formed there. So it looks fairly decent. Obviously with the vines it will look fairly good as well, but I did have to use a little bit of tape just right in that little gaps, then I could actually get that piece stuck on there. But other than that, this entire side of the cliffs here where it kind of rounds around is looking pretty good, and I can't wait to try and finish this off so we get this nice like fully rounded look at the front. But for now, I think I'm going to go ahead and snap this bit of rock into position. So that wasn't a seamless transition at all, but we now have this entire section up here done. Now, this is kind of a reoccurring theme, but I don't have all of it done. That's because I noticed something kind of major. So when I was looking through the base in Minecraft, and I printed out a bunch of photos here just to, get a better sense of everything that's going on, I noticed that all of the ledges, and I don't know how I didn't see this before, but every single one of the ledges there is green. So of course, why wouldn't we make these ledges that I'm building, like here and here, basically any flat spot, why wouldn't we make that green? So now I'm going to have to go through, and now it shouldn't be too big of a process. I may have to order a couple of green parts, but now I have to go through and replace all of these gray, like flat slopes with green ones. Now, if we move over to the section of wall that we have done before, and I don't know if you guys can hear me, because the microphone's not positioned very well, but I did do all of the green kind of layering on this section. So I guess basically I just have to copy what I did over here. So I don't know what I was thinking. I just probably should have remembered to do that green layering all on these little platforms. So I'm going to do that now. And you know what? I think it's time for a little bit of a time lapse to complete this front section here. So let's hit that time lapse. Of course, I had to use Scar's terraforming time-lapse music because we are terraforming, and we're doing it decently well. So this entire section here has turned out pretty darn good. I like how the sloping has come out. You can't really see too many of the seams where it goes from facing this way to facing this way. So yeah, we managed to pull that off fairly well. And since we've done all this terraforming, we get this kind of spectacular view here with all of this rock face done, so that is actually looking pretty amazing. Now I will point out that during that time lapse, this section here took a lot longer because I wasn't quite sure how to shape it, and when looking at the photo here, it's not quite the same. So what I should have done is this little gray, darker gray section here should have came out a little bit farther. This should have been bumped out a lot more, and this as well, so then it would have sloped upwards instead of outwards is what it's doing. But I think it looks fine, and of course we have to take a few creative liberties with this and kind of create our own design from Mumbo's design. I have no clue if anything I said there made any sense, but everything here is looking decently well. Now, there is a question that I've seen come up a couple of times, and that is, why am I going directly off of Mumbo's design here and trying to copy it fairly closely? And now, one main reason is that obviously I'm trying to create Mumbo's base, so it should kind of look like Mumbo's design, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is that if I just tried to design this out and figure out sloping myself, it would actually probably take longer than looking at an already preconceived and pre-built object here and then just transferring it into a Lego form. So I think it's a lot easier just trying to copy what Mumbo already did instead of coming up with my own design. This entire structure is looking pretty phenomenal, and I know it is slightly abrupt how it just kind of stops at a flat edge up there, but we will work on that later, and I know I keep saying that for every episode, but there is always more to do. And I suppose we have to remember that we did do a bunch of building in this episode. So I think that basically rounds it off for today. I think in the next episode, I'm going to maybe focus a little bit less on the cliffs and do a couple of things with the back section back there, but we'll see how that goes. But I think in every single episode here, we should probably be doing a little bit of the cliffs just, so we keep that progress going. So thank you all so much for watching, and with that said, Gigahertz Productions, out.